was the first Easter. 3 women set out to visit a tomb. They were Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and a woman named Salome. And they were scared. 3 days before, the leader of their movement, one based on love, and justice, and equity, had been brutally executed, nailed to a wooden cross, and left to hang there and die an agonizing death. Most of his followers had scattered and were laying low, afraid for their very lives as well. And as they hurried along in that early cold morning, the women wondered, as they went to the tomb where Jesus had been taken, these 3 women wondered, when we get there, who's going to roll that gigantic stone out of the way? That stone that had been put there in front of the tomb. When they arrived, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. When they looked into the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in all white sitting there. And they became even more afraid. And that young man said to them, Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified yesterday, is no longer here. He has been raised. And then he directs them to go and tell the disciples that Jesus will meet him in Galilee. And the women run away from the tomb in terror and amazement. And they were so afraid that they said nothing. And that's the entirety of the Easter story as it's originally reported in the gospel attributed to Mark. Scholars tell us that Mark was the earliest gospel, being written around 70 years of the Common Era, about 40 years after Jesus' crucifixion. In the other tellings of the gospel, there are lots of other things that happen. There's tremendous angels that come down and move the stone, and it's not fireworks exactly, but when a bunch of angels come down, stuff happens. At least it did in Matthew. Jesus meets Mary on the road in one of the Gospels. There's a cover-up by the chief priests to discredit Jesus in another Gospel. And there's a meet-up with the disciples on the mountain of Galilee at the end, where Jesus says to them, go out and share what it is we've been doing, this message of love for the world. But there's a part, he kept sneaking up on his disciples too. It's one of the funniest parts of the Gospels. Jesus is just sneaking around. He's in disguise at one point. He walks through a wall at one point. One of them just shows up in a room, and the disciples are always having this reaction. Huh! It's Jesus. Jesus, it's Jesus. So these stories are wonderful. We all have different relationships to these stories, and in my mind, these ancient stories are valuable to us for the hope that they shared. Jesus was a teacher and a healer and a prophet within the Jewish tradition, a mystic, and make no doubt about it, a social radical. He taught that people could have the ability to transform their own lives by loving one another, by even loving their enemies. That was the message. He said, love the God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Simply by not placing their faith in money, material things, and status and power, but in love instead. That is a message that is most welcome in this place. When I was a kid, I always used to wonder this question too. What was it that Jesus thought about when he woke up in that, if he woke up, I don't know how it goes or how he got there, but like when he found himself in that tomb, in that cold, dark tomb, what were his thoughts? What was his experience of being in that place, that dark, cold place? And also thinking there's a gigantic stone over there that's in the way between me and that world that I love. Now that I'm an adult, I wonder if Jesus thought about staying in the tomb for a while. Just staying away from it all. Staying away from everything. We know that there are points in his ministry where he questioned the whole plan from the beginning, especially the end of the plan, which did not go well for him. Sometimes the tomb isn't such a bad place. It can be like a womb or a cocoon, safe and secure, predictable. And that darkness can wrap around us and comfort rather than being a threat. The poet David Whyte writes in his poem, Sweet Darkness, when your eyes are tired, the world is tired also. When your vision has gone, no part of the world can find you. Time to go into the dark, where the night has eyes to recognize its own. There you can be sure that you are not beyond love. The dark will be your home tonight. The dark will give you a horizon further than you can see. You must learn one thing. The world was made to be free in. Give up all the other worlds except the one to which you belong. Sometimes it takes darkness and the sweet confinement of your aloneness to learn anything or anyone that does not bring you alive is too small for you. Sometimes that's just what we need, isn't it? A break, some darkness, some alone time, some me time, a time out of place where we can grieve or rest or heal or gather ourselves and then emerge fresh and maybe, if we're lucky, transformed. This tomb, this dark space, can be a place, even if we know that vulnerability is good, we know it can be exhausting. It can be hard. And that darkness maybe doesn't require that of us for a while. Growth. Growth. Again. Free from rejection, free from anxiety. At other times, maybe that tomb's an escape for us. A hideaway from the world and its pains and its headlines and its politics and worries. It can be just too much. Sometimes it's hiding from or in the cycles of the seasons. Maybe of depression, of outside forces pressing in, of addiction, or stubbornness, or apathy, or shame, or guilt, or hopelessness. Sometimes it can just give us maybe some respite. Or maybe be a place to be wounded and be okay with that for a while. To be protected. The tomb can be many things, whether the tomb of our choice is a rest area or an escape. And even if it can be nice and reassuring, there does come a time for us to roll away the stone and reconnect with life. There comes a time to let go of our fear and learn to risk loving and connecting and caring once again. We have to make a choice to remain in this tomb of darkness for all that it might offer us, or to figure a way to move the stone that keeps us imprisoned, to return to the light, because we are called back into the light. Because when you shut out the light of the sun, you may not squint, but you no longer feel the sun's warmth or joy anymore. A teacher of mine said once that you cannot numb pain without numbing joy too. So when we do become completely invulnerable, this includes us as being distant from the transformative and vulnerable to the power of love, to the power of life, to beauty. So in the same way that night returns to dawn and the winter invites the blooming of spring, we are called to move the stone and return to the world. So I can imagine that maybe Jesus hung out for just a little while in the cave before whatever happened that moved that stone, and he went on his way. I don't know what's going on in your life, the impact of the darkness around you, relationships or life or world events, or personal growth, or maybe it's just the coldness of being done with winter. But it's time to emerge from the tomb when you're ready. And now that we feel this calling in spring, there's one thing that remains, and it's not easy to move a stone sometimes. Sometimes those things that keep us there are big and large. They can be in the way. Who rolled away the stone? It's a great question. When we're sitting in our tombs, not sure what to do, we sit patiently and wait? Maybe some angels will show up and move it. Do we start pushing it on ourselves? Do we hope for some kind passersby who like moving random rocks? There are options. Or do we muster our courage and strength and do what we can? The only answer I can come up with is this, is it depends. There's no one way to get that thing out of the way. Sometimes our stone is rolled away purely by our own strength. strength and our will to grow and to love and to overcome that which holds us back. Sometimes our own personal resurrection comes when we try to stop forcing our own way out, but we trust that we can lean into other people and find some other hands, some other muscles, some other strength, some other support to move what holds us. Presence helps. Being present to our own situation and being aware. We put ourselves on Easter in a place where we can be receptive to this. This is what Dolly Parton did when she came up with that song that the choir sang, albeit a different arrangement for sure. New Harvest First Gathering is Dolly Parton's 18th solo album, but it was actually just the new beginning of her new life. She had gotten out of a long-term relationship with Porter Wagoner. Porter Wagoner helped her launch her career. She got on the Porter Wagoner show in 1967, and she came into the world. We began to know her songs, her spirit, her life, and she always dreamed of a solo career. She met Porter Wagoner her first week in Nashville. Didn't get married to him until later. So they were business partners, singing partners, and married partners, matrimonial partners. Her struggle for independence, to break free of this relationship, to find her own way, which Porter Wagoner wasn't really supporting. He understood the bottom line, if nothing else. But this experience inspired the words to Light of a Clear Blue Morning. It was her deliverance, she explained in her 2020 book, Storyteller. I felt like I was trapped in a situation and needed to be free because God was calling me, life was calling me to something bigger, but I felt like my feet were nailed to the floor. She considered Wagoner family and close. She knew that this contentious relationship was only going to hold her back. And so she did. She set out. On the night she told Wagoner she wanted to split, she left his office and thought to herself, what a long, dark night it had been, making that truth real in the world. On the drive home, the clouds parted and the sun lit up the sky. And Dolly thought to herself, well, if that ain't a sign, I don't know what is. She says, I started saying the words to the song. By the time I got home, I had pretty much had the whole song done in my head. I felt like God had spoken to me. I'd had a good talk with myself, and I was free, thinking I'd won my freedom like an angel, like an eagle, and I'm eager for the sky. So let me go and look out, world. Indeed, she only sped up from there. And it wasn't easy, because there were lawsuits and all kinds of things that were enmeshed. But that album did do well. That song did do well. And it was the #1 country album of the year. She didn't see the money of that. That all went to Porter. But in time, she did make her way. She found the light of that clear blue morning. She made that decision to roll away the tomb out of tears and out of the ashes, out of a cave of grief and mourning into a new life with new purpose, as each of us might do with new stories to be written. So who rolled that stone away for Dolly Parton? Who did it? Well, she did it, of course. If you've ever heard an interview with Dolly Parton, you know that she's capable of moving large stones on her own. The spirit of life within her did it. God did it. The people responsive to her situation did. She's always been generous with her praise of those who surround her and have supported her. Of her family did it. Everybody rolled it away. It was a group effort. Everyone who believed that there is more dawn to have on the next day rolled it away. And this makes up the miracle and mystery and the blessing of an Easter morning. To roll away the stone, we will need to call upon our own courage and power, and we may well need to call upon each other. So what is your stone? Perhaps on this Easter morning, it's time to consider to roll it away by whatever means possible, and to greet this beautiful, blooming spring day. Because this, like every day, is a new day. May it be so.